Production.
Basically, let's start off on the monthly time frame, and we'll go long-term thought process, long-term thesis, and then we'll zoom into the weekly, and we'll get into all the nitty-gritty until we get into the daily and what we could expect on a more closer time frame. Okay, so this is what we're looking at. Right, we have Galaxy Digital monthly time frame, and overall, like I've been talking about this for years, the crypto space and now the AI space, two arms of Galaxy, they're going to grow into massive industries. How big are these industries going to grow to? Well, let's say crypto ends up being a $10 trillion industry. Same thing with AI, just round easy numbers. If that's the case, Galaxy being in, like, imagine the Venn diagram of, crypto and AI, and Galaxy's in the middle. If those two industries grow in tandem together, I imagine Galaxy having some part of benefit from that, being kind of the only company that's connected to both in such an integral way. What we could do with this from a technical point of view is imagine like a longer term pattern developing. So, basic Elliott wave shit. We have wave 1, wave 2. This is the wave 3 that we're in. I've been talking about this for years now. Where is the top of this wave 3? We will look into that, as these next weeks and months come by. But I imagine that something like this is going to be, the play here with Galaxy. Maybe it looks something like this. Who knows? I don't know. But overall, that's the thesis, is that we're in a wave 3 right now. The wave 4 and 5 we could deal with later. How high are we going to go on this wave 3? Well, let's look at the weekly time frame. We zoom in and, to make sense of what's going on. For me, and I've pointed this out, it doesn't really matter what you see. It could be a cup and handle pattern. It could be, for me, it's the inverse head and shoulders that makes the most sense. But this is the longer term 4-year pattern, right? So we have May 2021 or April 2021. The top kind of gets set in. We have a 2-year bear market all the way down to October 2023. We've been rallying since, and then we create that right shoulder, right? Back into this zone. This is our first time kind of breaking out of this zone, right? So I imagine, just like any other major pattern, we'll get a breakout and retest of some sort. That's how my brain is kind of trying to think about all this. I imagine there's going to be some sort of breakout and retest of this major area. So in Canadian terms, it's $43 and call it $50. Or if we're going exact, it's, the high of 46 and into this zone of like 40, okay? $40 to $46, that's the neckline of this inverse head and shoulders. By technical terms, we should get a breakout, retest, and continuation if this larger trend does continue, right? So how can this make sense? The way I see it is we have a clear, it looks like this. Again, this is all just me speculating in a sense, with a broader kind of fundamental understanding of like where Galaxy is. How does the technicals make sense is what I'm trying to explain. This strong move, pull back, strong move, pull back, strong move, and then I imagine we're going to get some sort of back test. Where does this go? Okay, there's a bunch of different ways you can look at this, right? You've seen so many people now talk Galaxy and post their technical charts. There's so many different ways you can kind of get targets of where that is, whether it's psychological numbers, like for example 50 USD, right? So if we go to the Galaxy USD chart, 50 USD is about close to $75 Canadian, right? So where would that bring us? Oh, sorry, Galaxy USD chart, right? So that would bring us $50 USD. Okay, so now what would that look like on the Galaxy CAD version, right? So it would be the $75 area, right? So that's like one way of, psychologically guessing where our targets could be, right? Closer term targets. You could use your Fibonacci extension tool, which would go like this. the low of here, your right shoulder, the most impulsive move to your, then the high it made, and then the first pullback, the deepest point of the first pullback. That gives you your Fibonacci extension from this move here. That shows us, this area, which the 1.272 and the 1.414, that's around 57-ish dollars. The 2.272 is around 75. You could use your Fibonacci extension to kind of, make that target for yourself, right? So it'd be like something like this, where this wave 5 move could potentially bring us to that $75, right? So let's say that's potentially a scenario. You could also look at, just getting your Fibonacci retracement from the high here all the way down to the low of this, and then let's double click this style lines, right? That could give you some targets here, right? So let's say that's your Fibonacci retracement tool. Instead of using the extension, where does it show us? 1.414, 64, 2 is around 116, right? So let's say maybe people use it that way, right? There's multiple ways to find your targets. The way I kind of want to look at it is, how are we going to find it in real time is for looking signals like this, right? So if you look here, we have this massive rally in Galaxy. We have a, you can call that a gravestone doji at the very top of a trend with massive volume. And we, stall to break that point after, even though we come and retest this area, we can't break it. And if you look here, you could look at this as a evening star candlestick pattern over 3 weeks, all right? So 2 major signals, and then we bottom and start a bear market. Is it going to be that easy to identify that this time? Who knows? Maybe they will, maybe they won't. Typically, if this is a bubble per se, they tend to pop, and when they pop, they do signs like this, right? Think back to April 2021 of the previous crypto bull market. So that's kind of what I'm looking for. I have my ideas on what it's going to look like from that point. So again, we go like this. If we're going to get that, retest and run, right? Maybe this starts to go towards a palantiring, right? Or let's say 2026 is even still bullish. We don't get the bear market per se that we think we're going to get. Well, I imagine there's going to be some sort of consolidation, which would be a nice maybe A, B, C consolidation that brings us back and tests this neckline into and make sure it's support now instead of resistance. And then we continue our uptrend. Could that be potentially the case? Maybe. But all in all, we're worried on like this next move, which I believe is the third part of that wave, right? So 1, 2 to retrace and bring it all back, right? Where this ends before we get that wave 4 retracement, which could be maybe it's a year, maybe it's 6 months, I don't know. To get that move, the wave 4 move, we have to find the top of the wave 3 move. So that's I think we're close to getting there, depending on how markets react in 2026 or even maybe to the end of this year. But that's the breakdown. That's kind of like what I'm looking at. For the most part, daily time frame, all I'm really looking for right now is following the 8 and the 21 EMA. Like that's what I want to look at. I want to see like, do we break below the 8? How do we react to the 21? That type of thing. Do we see a blow off top situation? But right now, I think, October, November, maybe even into December, I'm hoping the seasonality of everything kind of adds into it. We see Novogratz go on podcasts more. We see Novogratz talk about or go on television more and kind of build the community of Galaxy. You start to see more people get in on Galaxy. The buzz around it on Twitter gets more vibrant. Like I think those are the signs that, higher prices are coming. We'll see if it continues to do that as we, go across the rest of this year. But everything's looking good, man. It's exciting times. Peace.